Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 73 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
Diet dissolution planned for October 14th ahead of Japan general election.
Into the line for Japan's only all-double-decker shinkansen bullet train.
Fukuoka man arrested for stealing 3 rare lizards worth $30,000 from Maid Cafe.
This week in Japan. Alright, so our first story, diet dissolution planned for October 14th ahead of Japan general election.
The Mainichi has reported that Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has begun arrangements to dissolve the House of Representatives on October 14th, with general election dates primarily under review for 2 potential timeframes, one in which the election is declared on October 26th, with voting held on November the 7th, and another scenario with the declaration on November 2nd and polls opening on November 14th.
The extraordinary diet session, which convened on October 4th, has to end soon at any rate, as the current House of Representatives term ends on October 21st. This will be the first time in post-war Japanese history that a lower house election will happen after the end of the 4-year term.
On October 4th, Kishida was formally elected as Japan's new prime minister, succeeding Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, after winning the LDP presidential election, which was held on September 29th. After Kishida's inaugural general policy speech on October 8th, the floor will be opened for opposition party representatives' questions, which are all but guaranteed to be criticisms guised as questions, will take place from October 11th to the 13th.
After getting grilled by the opposition, Kishida is expected to call for the diet's dissolution during the lower house plenary session on October 14th.
So, who is Japan's new prime minister, Fumio Kishida? We will do a deep dive into his background and the outlook for his premiership later on Japanese politics. Wow.
Alright, our next story. Into the line for Japan's only all-double-decker Shinkansen bullet train.
The Mainichi has also reported that Japan's only all-double-decker Shinkansen bullet train, the E4 series, was retired from regular operations on October the 1st.
Crew members and maintenance staff with operator East Japan Railway Co. are set to bid a fond farewell to the popular MAX, or Multi-Amenity Express, a train series that has embodied mass passenger transport since the 1990s.
Masayuki Ito, 44 years old, who has worked as a conductor on MAX Toki and MAX Tanigawa, said about the outgoing train, quote, "It left a strong impression when passengers cheered after they first saw how high the view was when they first entered the upper deck. I want people to see Max's majestic figure right to the end."
The E4 series was born against a backdrop of trends such as long-distance commuting to central Tokyo and Japan's skiing boom. Its operation was launched in 1997 to realize mass passenger transport amid increased demand on the Joetsu Shinkansen line, which connects Tokyo, northern Kanto, and Niigata. One unit of the E4 series train consists of 8 double-decker carriages. When 2 units are connected, the seating capacity of the 16-carriage train is 1,634, the world's largest for a high-speed train.
The previous E1 series, which was retired in 2012, consisted of 12 cars and did not allow for multiple trains to be connected. In contrast, the E4 series first car has a coupling device, making it possible to operate flexibly using the 8 carriage units.
The upper deck of the first car is spectacular. Each row has 3+3 seating, which is rare for shinkansen. To secure space, seats are non-reclining and have no armrests. The train door entrance area was designed 30 centimeters wider than conventional models to allow passengers to board and alight smoothly. Compared to the E1, the E4 series is lighter in weight and also makes less noise by adopting a, quote, long nose to reduce the wind resistance on the first car.
You know, it really is sad to see this Shinkansen leave service because it was just so wacky. I mean, a double-decker Shinkansen, I mean, you've seen them on the platform, right? They're just so big.
No, for sure. I mean, I've traveled around Japan on these things as well, and they're a lot of fun. If we could ask this Masayuki Ito one question, the biggest thing on my mind would be, how many chugas are there really before a choo-choo? Have you heard about this before?
Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, they do this in a lot of other podcasts, and YouTubers will talk about this because everyone in their head has a different amount of time, choo choo. Exactly. You did 8. 8
chugas.
Yeah.
How many chugas?
Probably for me. Chuka 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 choo choo. I don't know how many that was.
That was a lot of chugas.
Yeah, but it depends on the person. Everyone has a different conception of how many chugas come before a choo choo. So I wonder, this famous train conductor, what his thoughts would be on that.
Well, I happen to be a expert on choo choos because in my hometown in Tennessee, we actually have an establishment called the Choo Choo.
Ah, okay.
Can you guess what kind of an establishment it is?
Something to do with trains?
Yes, it used to be a train station.
Oh, but now it's not.
No.
Huh.
It's a train station themed complex.
Ah, okay.
And they've actually got train cars that you can stay in. So I think it used to be a Holiday Inn, and I think they made it into a nicer hotel or something. They keep on changing it around, but
oh, cool. All right, and up next, Fukuoka man arrested for stealing 3 rare lizards worth $30,000 from Maid Cafe.
TNC Nishi Nippon TV has reported that a man was arrested on September 20th on suspicion of intruding into a maid cafe where customers can pet reptiles and other animals and stealing 3 rare lizards with a total market value of 3.2 million yen. That's roughly $30,000.
Fukuoka Prefectural Police arrested Yusuke Haruta, a 38-year-old office worker, for intruding into reptile maid cafe Hachu Melt in Fukuoka's Chuo Ward multiple times between around 6:30 p.m. on September 16th and 10:50 a.m. The following day, Fukuoka Prefectural Police arrested Yusuke Haruta, a 38-year-old office worker, for stealing the lizards by intruding into reptile maid cafe Hachu Melt in Fukuoka's Chuo Ward multiple times between around 6:30 p.m. on September 16th and 10:50 a.m. the following day.
On September the 20th, Haruta turned himself in at Hakata Police Station with the 3 reptiles in tow. He said that he visited the cafe as a regular customer and reportedly admitted to the allegations, saying, quote,
I love lizards and wanted them for myself. I cared for them at home.
Wow. The cafe said the stolen animals were 2 armadillo-girdled lizards measuring about 15 to 20 centimeters long, native to South Africa, and worth 1.2 million yen, that's about 11,000 USD, each, and a single-back lizard about 30 centimeters long from Australia, worth 800,000 yen, about 7,300 USD. Imports of them are currently restricted, and they are the most popular of the cafe's roughly 50 reptiles.
The cafe, Hachu Melt, posted on social media its security camera footage from the time of the caper and called publicly for the lizard's safe return. All 3 lizards were apparently safe after being turned in, and a 26-year-old employee in charge of the animal's care said, quote, "I thought the culprit knew a lot about reptiles because they targeted small, expensive lizards. I was worried because lizards are less tolerant of temperature changes, and it had turned cold in the morning. I'm relieved they haven't gotten weak."
So Parker, the biggest thing that I'm thinking right now is like, man, this maid cafe's theme is lizards. Like, here in Akiba, there's lots of different themed maid cafes, right? Like even just walking around outside, there's all these like, salespeople trying to get you to come in, but I've never heard of like a lizard themed one.
The thing that I can't stop thinking is, does it need to be a maid cafe? Can't it just be a lizard cafe?
Yeah, like almost like the cat cafes and the owl cafes.
Yeah,
like,
why do they have to be maids?
I don't know.
Is there like a maid lizard anime that we don't know about?
Combining too many things, I think.
Aaron, have you seen Maid Lizard 4? Oh my god, it's so cute!
They have a rebirth as a slime is a big one now. Like, have you heard about this?
I mean, it just sounds like something that Exhibit would do on Pimp My Ride. Yo, dog, I heard you like maids and lizards, so we put maids and lizards in your ride, dog!
Yeah, it's combining too many things. It's kind of like kimoi, I think, doesn't make me think. I wouldn't want to go to that cafe.
I don't know. I mean, it's just weird enough to where if someone was like, want to go to a maid lizard cafe? I'd be like, maids, lizards, why not?
I'd love to make like a horror themed cafe and have like actors there that like, like all of a sudden terrible stuff happens to them.
Well, they already have this. You've never been to the lockup?
Oh, a long time ago. Yeah.
I wonder if that's still a thing.
Definitely not during COVID. I mean, I hate to laugh at it, but yeah, they're probably shut down.
Yeah, there used to be so many wacky themed cafes and izakayas and everything. Mm-hmm. I had heard of this. I'd never been to it. There's a elementary school themed izakaya chain. Have you heard about this?
Whoa, no.
They have like the little tables and little chairs.
Oh man, I could totally see that. Yeah. I know about the pre-World War II themed cafes are pretty big, right? There's a couple of them, I think, in Tokyo.
Yeah, like sort of vintage style.
Yeah, well, it's very like, Japanese like nationalist era, like right before World War II and like leading up to it.
I haven't heard about that actually.
These are really cool, man. I think it's like a communist cafe.
Come on to the communist cafe.
This was years ago. I forget the exact name of the restaurant, but yeah. On this topic, there's just so many different themes for restaurants, for maid cafes, for everything here. And I mean, hey, people say there's not a lot of innovation here in Japan, but maid lizard cafe is pretty interesting and arguably innovative. And then why the hell were there such expensive lizards there?
Well, to draw in the lizard crowd. So I guess like they were trying to get the maid crowd and the lizard crowd.
Yeah.
And I guess there's some overlap of people who like both lizards and maids.
Makes me think just Fukuoka is a wild place. I got to go down there and spend some more time down there.
Go down to Tenjin, the maid lizard capital of Japan.
All right, and coming up next on Japanese Politics Wow, we'll be talking about who is Fumio Kishida, Japan's new prime minister.
You're now listening to Tokyo Wave.
Nikkei Asia recently covered the background of Japan's new prime minister, Fumio Kishida, who will be leading the ruling Liberal Democratic Party into a general election next month.
Born into a political family in Hiroshima, Kishida, 64 years old, served as a foreign minister and party policy chief under Prime Minister Abe. His father and grandfather were lower house lawmakers. He has family links to former Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa, and he also heads one of the LDP's oldest factions, the Kochikai.
Masato Kamikubo, a professor of political science at Ritsumeikan University in Kyoto, said that Kishida is, quote, a moderate and well-experienced politician who has no track record of major failure, but there's no track record of any major success in policymaking either.
On economic policy, Kishida has floated the idea of moving away from neoliberalism, at the core of LDP ideology since the 2000s, and placing more focus on reducing income disparity.
Kishida has said he plans to expand support for household spending on education and housing, and has proposed an economic stimulus package worth tens of trillions of yen.
Kishida told Nikkei in an interview in September, inequality has expanded further because of the coronavirus. At companies, should shareholders take all the fruits of their growth? As proponents of stakeholder capitalism argue, they need to be distributed appropriately.
Kishida has also said that raising worker incomes and compensation should be a top priority.
On the other hand, Masamichi Adachi, an economist at UBS Securities in Tokyo, said he expects Kishida's economic policies to generally maintain the status quo.
On the foreign policy front, Kishida is likely to continue with the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, a holdover from Abe-era policies. Kishida has also expressed deep alarm at China's aggressive behavior on both diplomatic and economic fronts.
Kishida also told the Nikkei, the international community is changing dramatically, with authoritarian state systems gaining more power. I have a strong sense of crisis towards this.
He has also emphasized the need for the capability to strike enemy missile bases to prevent any imminent attack. From whom?
As foreign minister, Kishida played a role in bringing about Barack Obama's 2016 visit to Hiroshima, the first trip to the atomic bombing site by a sitting American president.
Kishida helped pave the way for the historic moment during visits to the city by Caroline Kennedy, then U.S. Ambassador to Japan, and then Secretary of State John Kerry. To prepare for personally guiding Obama at Ground Zero, Kishida is said to have practiced his lines in English at his office in the Diet.
You know, I remember this moment, and it was really, really powerful. I think probably one of the best decisions Obama made in helping, U.S.-Japan diplomatic relations.
Most definitely. And I think that obviously being here in Japan, I think it's probably our most strong memory of the Obama era, as, of course, it was our president in Japan doing something very historic.
Undoubtedly, Prime Minister Kishida's most important policy issue will be the ongoing fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Kishida has said he aims to fully inoculate all residents of Japan who want to be vaccinated by the end of November.
He has proposed setting up a government health crisis management agency to respond to public health crises and create a more crisis-resilient medical system.
Aside from this new rhetoric, Ritsumeikan's Kamikubo also expects no significant change, stating, the birth of a status quo leader shows how the LDP lacks the urgency to change. The real focus here is how he forms a cabinet and who he appoints to which role. Bringing diversity into his cabinet will be key to winning the upcoming general election.
One interesting thing to know about Prime Minister Kishida is that he spent time during his youth living in the United States. A recent New York Times article delved into his American experience.
In 1963, his father, then a government trade official, was appointed to a post in New York. The family relocated, and Kishida, at age 6, enrolled at public schools, including PS 13 in Elmhurst section of Queens, where he attended 2nd and 3rd grade. In a 1965 class photo, he is seen wearing a bow tie, standing in front of a giant American flag.
Sounds kind of cute. Little kid wearing a bow tie. I don't see that much anymore.
Yeah. In front of an American flag.
Kishida's classmates included children of diverse backgrounds, including Caucasian, Korean, Indian, and Native American. But he sometimes felt the sting of racial discrimination. In his book, Kishida Vision, published last year, he described a time in 1965 when a white classmate refused to hold his hand as instructed by a teacher on a field trip.
Still, he came to admire the United States, finding it remarkable that students of varied backgrounds respected the national flag and sang the anthem together in the morning.
Kishida wrote further about this admiration in his book, saying, quote, "The U.S. was an enemy of Japan during the war and the nation that dropped the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. But I was young, and to me, the U.S. was nothing but a country that was generous-hearted and filled with diversity."
Well, going into a new prime minister, it's good to hear that he has somewhat of a cultured background and did spend time in the U.S.
And I think, of course, one of the biggest issues for any new prime minister is how they are going to work with Japan's foreign relations, especially amid the increasing influence of China and the unstable situation with the Koreas and, of course, myriad other issues that come up involving Japan and, of course, the United States and, of course, its other allies. And having a prime minister who can tackle these issues with, of course, as much background as possible is a huge boost. And so as foreign minister, of course, he's been briefed on all these things, and having had experience actually living in the United States, extremely well prepared to tackle these issues moving forward.
Right. My biggest question is how's his English? Because, with Kono, the reason I was excited about him becoming prime minister is his English is pretty good, right? Okay, so it's pretty damn good, I would say, intonation-wise. I mean, no offense to Abe, but a lot better than Abe's English, right?
And I think this is an interesting point that, a lot of the members of the National Diet have some study abroad experience, and most of them, in some capacity, spent time in either the United States or the UK or another English-speaking country. On the other hand, though, that experience tends to have been a pretty long time ago, given the average age of Diet members tends to be 50s, 60s, even into their 70s and 80s. So you've got people who can read an English speech, but I guess the question that I have, and actually I don't know the answer to this, is, really, can he speak off the cuff and in sort of, diplomatic situations that would require him to, either be able to speak, with or without an interpreter. Yeah. I would imagine most prime ministers, even if they had pretty good English, would still opt to use an interpreter in a divisive situation. But of course, someone like a Kono Taro, for instance, would have been able to operate without an interpreter. So obviously there's different levels of it, but I think that he's well equipped to be able to operate on the global stage, given his experience and his capabilities with language, in addition to his foreign policy experience.
Absolutely. I wish Kishida the best, and I hope this is going to be a successful premiership for him. But I was excited about Taro Kono and just the idea of him being able to pick up the phone, talking to President of Korea, talking President of the United States, and just immediately get into some kind of,
"Hey, China, cut that out."
Yeah. China was going to be the next one, right? And just having, like you said, these hardline, kind of direct conversations. Which seems to be pretty common amongst other prime ministers and other presidents of other nations, right?
Definitely. One, I think, connected to that, not directly, but sort of directly, is overall communication ability. Because really, as the professor stated, Kishida's chops haven't really been tested on a super divisive issue. And even as foreign minister, he was, of course, the emissary of Prime Minister Abe and enacting Abe's policies. Now he's going to be enacting his own policies. And also, as prime minister, he's going to be responsible as the communicator in chief of being able to communicate these policies to the public.
Hopefully it's not like a Suga situation where Suga went from just communicating, the news and everything from Abe's cabinet to the public to having to actually create that contents and communicate it as well. I think that's what broke Suga.
And I think it was the pressure of that really sort of contributed to the furrowed brows that we saw so frequently on the news up until very recently.
Yeah.
And I think when we're looking at the prime ministership of Kishida, we really want to know what kind of a communicator he's going to be until, we've got to give him a few months. What is his first 100 days going to look like? And how is he going to lead his party into this election?
Here's a question. If he's bad, how soon can they get rid of him? Theoretically.
That's a good question. And obviously there's no...
Like if he's like really, really bad. Because the election cycle here is just so random. Is seemingly random to a lot of us from the West.
And I think with regard to that, obviously the term of the prime minister is dictated by the term of the LDP president. However, of course, the prime minister can resign. And it's almost like in a Japanese company where people aren't fired, they are pressured into resigning.
Oh, yeah.
And so if something terrible happens and his popularity takes a nosedive, then of course there will be mounting pressure for the prime minister to resign. And we saw this sort of revolving door before the second Abe era where we had a new prime minister every year. And there were instances where the prime minister really only lasted about a year. And so really around the 1 year mark is really where if a prime minister's popularity is going to nosedive, it really starts to hit rock bottom around the 10, 11 month mark. And so around that timing, if his popularity is low and if there's mounting pressure, then there are going to be movements. Like people are going to coalesce around this idea of, we can't deal with this guy anymore.
Right. Another thing I'm very interested to see and how he handles with and takes care of is the reopening of Japan. And obviously, as foreigners, we're concerned with this. But really, I think this is something that most Japanese should be concerned and are fairly concerned with because of how many industries are systemically connected to tourism here in Japan. I know the Japanese government came out with some new 2030 targets for tourism, which are like astronomically huge. But if they want to get there in 10 years or 9 years, Kishida is going to have to make some moves soon. It's good to hear that he's planning on getting everybody vaccinated who wants to be vaccinated by November. But the next thing is, okay, so when are we going to open everything back up again? Right.
And so that's really the big question. And obviously, when this podcast comes out, something might have already been announced. But as of the time of our recording, there haven't been any announcements, of course, especially regarding tourists, but even regarding new visa recipients. And so if you applied for a visa anytime after January the 6th of this year, then you have not been able to enter the country. So
stuck in limbo.
Yes, re-entrants, of course, are allowed back in. But if you haven't had a resident status active and you're applying for new resident status, those people still can't get into the country. And that includes, of course, foreign exchange students, even recipients of the prestigious Japanese Monbusho scholarship, and people office workers who are transferring as members of a global company, even situations where the company president of famous multinationals aren't able to get into the country to do their job because Japan will not let them.
Yeah, crazy situation. I mean, that's the kind of thing that if Japan is really serious about its image to the rest of the world, they kind of need to get working on that and really just get in the habit of communicating what's the status update, right? Because Japan will go, like you mentioned, January, they'll go 6 months without saying anything about reentry, what they plan on doing. I mean, at least let us know. If it's going to be another 8 months, that's fine. But let us know and give us some kind of plan.
Well, I think obviously the pandemic hit, and the restrictions started getting very strict around April of last year, where, of course, we had that hard lockdown of the border to foreign nationals. And really from April to October, even residents of Japan, such as ourselves, if we had left the country at that timing, we would not have been allowed back in with no timeline as to when we could get back into the country. That has changed, of course, from October of 2020. And so we aren't facing that issue anymore. But that had never really happened before, at least not in the 14 years that I've been in Japan.
Right.
And after that happened, of course, leaving the country for anybody, us included, is a little bit scary because we have no 100% guarantee that won't happen again.
It's very nerve-wracking.
There might be a Zeta, Beta, Delta variant, and they might shut down the country again. There's really no way to tell.
Kaboom, we're closed. You can't get in.
No Japan for you!
Yeah. So
get out of here. But I am interested to see how Kishida works on issues like this, which will be front and center in the coming months, as someone with a strong U.S.-Japan relationship experience, very up close and personal, as, both the American Chamber, the European Chamber, the Canadian Chamber, really all of the foreign business interests in Japan have really been lobbying for this restriction to be changed and for the government to more proactively communicate the situation regarding entry into Japan. I think that a prime minister such as Kishida, given his foreign minister experience and also given his English language ability, might be more susceptible to lobbying on that front.
For sure.
Whereas, of course, Abe and Suga were like, oh, this is me not listening to you.
Yeah, let's hope to get some more information out of these guys, at least a plan. I mean, they could turn this into a big thing, right? Let's say people are saying next April 2022 might be the big open. I mean, if that's the case, they should start marketing that and getting everybody ready, giving subsidies and support to restaurants that were shut down during the pandemic that were very successful and helped the local economies. And I mean, this is a lot of talk about what they should do, but that's what I'd like to see personally.
Yes, but at the same time, any prime minister is going to have to be focused on the domestic situation as well. And of course, it's a catch-22 because letting the foreigners in is almost certainly going to have public opinion repercussions for any even new prime minister.
For sure.
Well, let's see what happens. Good luck to our new prime minister, and we hope that our friends can come visit us sometime in the next decade.
Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.